You know that segment we do where Colin was right, where Colin was wrong? I know I don't do that, once we get out of football season.
Where Colin was right?
Yeah, I was right on this one. He never wanted to retire. He did what people do in relationships. For 4 years, he complained about the coaching. What he was complaining about was Todd Haley, the offensive coordinator, who's been in 2 reported bar fights, who has a reputation as overly intense and confrontational. Now the rumor is Haley's going to be out of there. Now he suddenly doesn't want to retire. Okay, that's what guys do. I don't know. I won't speak for women, but we complain. And then if you don't comply or listen to us, we threaten to leave. He was never going to retire. He never wanted to retire. He wanted to get rid of Todd Haley, who's a yeller and a screamer. And as Bruce Arians told me earlier this week in our show, we know that Big Ben doesn't like to be yelled at. Peyton Manning handles it. Andrew Luck handles it. Big Ben doesn't like it. So Big Ben suddenly today is like, I'm not going to retire, nor should he. And Breeze isn't going to retire, and nor should he. We always talk about Brady retirement. Big Ben, you don't retire, pal. You're still amazing. I'm going to show you Big Ben's influence because it's amazing how many people now are saying, whoa, he was terrible against the Jags. If he loses again, let me show you influence. This is what you call influence. So in my entire life, the AFC North, it used to be called the AFC Central. And then, a few years ago, they changed it to the AFC North. It's always been like Cincinnati, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, then Baltimore comes along. It's been the black and blue division. It's been the tough guy division. The stars are defensive players like Ray Lewis, Troy Polamalu. It's defensive guys. Dunlap for Cincinnati. Even today, Baltimore, Cincinnati, most of the big stars in the division on their team are defensive-minded guys. Now, think about Ben's influence. In the 70s, the Pittsburgh Steelers were not only the best team, they were the number 1 defensive brand in professional football in America. You said Pittsburgh Steelers, it was defense. I mean, you could have quarterback, it was defense. In the 80s, in the 90s, Dick LeBeau, defense. From 93 to 2012, 20 years, Steelers were virtually always a top 10 defense. This has been, not every year, there's been a year the Bears were great or the Broncos were great or the Ravens were great. In my lifetime, 40 years of watching NFL, the number 1 defensive brand in the National Football League has been the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then Big Ben comes around. Okay, Big Ben comes around, and there's Joey Porter and Harrison and Troy, and they get older. But if you notice something about Pittsburgh now, the number 1 defensive brand for 40 years in the NFL, who are their stars now all the time? It was Santonio Holmes, Le'Veon Bell, Mike Wallace, Antoine Randall L., Emmanuel Sanders. Now they have a new one. Juju Smith-Schuster is their latest star. Are you seeing a pattern here? What is the one team, and I've said this, Kristine, probably 5 times over the last 2 years, what is the one team that seems to never miss when drafting one position? Steelers wide receivers. You think that has anything to do with Big Ben throwing the ball? Every Steeler receiver. And then Mike Wallace leaves, disappears. Emmanuel Sanders leaves, gets Peyton, but then he's not as big a deal. Santonio Holmes leaves, never the same player. The only other team in the NFL that always seems to find these great wide receivers that we never watched in college, Devontae Adams and Jordy Nelson and Greg Jennings, is the Green Bay Packers. And Aaron Rodgers is the reason why. If Devontae Adams was in Jacksonville, you wouldn't know who he is. If he was in Cleveland, you wouldn't know who he is. Yeah. You want to know Big Ben's influence. He inherits the number 1 defensive brand in the sport in the black and blue division. And Pittsburgh now is considered an offensive machine because of Big Ben. Okay? Because of Big Ben. Because of Big Ben, they're the one team that drafts this one position. By the way, wide receiver is a hard position. Bill Belichick is horrible at drafting wide receivers. Terrible. But these two teams do it really, really well. Green Bay and the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the reason, and the only reason, and they just did it again with a second-round kid named Juju Smith-Schuster. Nothing against that kid. Big Ben and Aaron Rodgers. Notably this weekend, Big Ben is the reason why. When you can inherit a brand in a division, in a sport known for one thing, and now it's the opposite. The only thing we question this weekend is the rest of the way is, can that Steeler defense stop Brady? Could that Steeler defense eventually stop Breeze? Could it stop Atlanta? We don't worry about the offense. I only go to movies in November and December, mostly December, because the movie studio tells me which ones are the good movies. I don't need to know what the good movies are. The movie studio, because awards season is January and February. So the movie studio puts all their good movies out end of November and December. I don't need to read reviews. I know The Post is good. I know Three Billboards is good. I know The Darkest Hour is good. I know Molly's Game is good. And I'm sure there's a Jeremy Irons or, one of those movies, The Phantom Thread. That's probably good too. Because movies tell you it without going to the movies. I don't need to read the reviews. Because movies want recency bias. The studios want to drop all their best movies in late November and December. So when you vote for the Oscars, there's perhaps some recency bias. And we're all certainly capable of having recency bias. The best catch in football is the best I ever saw. The prettiest girl walks by, prettiest girl I've ever seen. It's called recency bias. And so the studios know, drop the movie in December, and then when they vote in January for the Academy Awards, you'll get a little recency bias. And that's the way it works. Smart game planning. Restaurants do the same thing. If I walk by a restaurant, I don't need to know how good your food is. Any neighborhood restaurant, if it's any good, is crowded every night of the week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, because everybody always wants a good meal. It doesn't matter if it's Friday. Everybody's crowded on a Friday. If I walk by on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and you got people in the restaurant, I know it's a good restaurant. I don't have to try your food. So I hit 60% of my NFL bets this year against the spread. Now, I can get 70, 80% just picking winners. But against the spread, I'm always very proud if I can get 60% because that's what the wise guys do. That's like a professional betting number, and I take it seriously. So let's put up the 4 lines this weekend in the National Football League. Now, I don't do Blazing 5 during the playoffs because there's only 4 games to choose from. I like taking 15 and choosing 5. But I'll tell you, there's a couple of things here. Much like the movies, the studios tell me what the good ones are without going to them. And much like restaurants and neighborhoods, I don't need to know how good your food is. You're busy on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. I know it's good. When I look at these lines, Vegas is telling you something on a couple of them. Look at New Orleans, Minnesota. Our heart is with the Saints. Most of us like Drew Brees. And he was great last weekend. They have the amazing running attack. They have a better head coach. They have a Hall of Fame quarterback. And Vegas is giving the Saints 5 points. Vegas doesn't want to give. It doesn't want to give Minnesota 5 points. It doesn't want to give, New Orleans 5 points. It doesn't want to give Sean Payton with more experience 5 points. It doesn't want to give Drew Brees 5 points. It doesn't want to give that running game 5 points. It doesn't want to give that incredibly functional team in big spots 5 points. Saints even have a good defense. What is that telling you? Vegas is telling me with that line, Minnesota's got a way better team. And Minnesota's going to win that game. I looked at all these lines. Obviously, Vegas is telling you Tennessee's really a non-playoff team that is in the playoffs. Because this is not a great New England team, and they're favored by 2 touchdowns. The line isn't telling me anything in Atlanta, Philadelphia. And it's not necessarily telling me anything in Jacksonville and Pittsburgh. But when I bet games, I'm just betting numbers. I don't care about the teams. To give a Saints team with a Hall of Fame quarterback still brilliant, a Hall of Fame coach still brilliant, a team that just beat excellent Carolina for the 3rd straight time, a team that has its best defense in years, I mean, you're talking Hall of Fame coach and quarterback in a sport where those are the most important things, and they're going to get 5 points. That's a lot of points. Vegas doesn't like to give you more than 2 and 2.5, 3. They play that 2.5, 3 number. That tells you Vegas says Minnesota's really, really good. To me, they're going to win this football game. And I did see 3 billboards, and I didn't have to read the reviews, and I'm going to go see the Post, and I go to neighborhood restaurants that are busy on Tuesday and Wednesday. Sometimes people are telling you stuff. Just got to pay attention. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.